All right, in the continual high school versus AAU debate, it appears that AAU basketball is not going away. So many high school coaches have now started their own club programs or feeder programs that reach down to middle school and even elementary school children, and they run these teams as a feeder into their high school program. And in some respects, this seems like it should be positive. We have high school coaches working with youth players, and that is based on the assumption that high school coaches are more qualified or better teachers because they have a teaching background from an educational standpoint. That may or may not be true, but it is an argument that many people make. And also because it would appear that this could create a long-term development model. So, players start however young, second, third, fourth grade, and they progress through one club system all the way through until they get to high school, and so they're in the same club for a number of years, anywhere 5, 6, 10 years, developing under the same coach. And that would seem to be a long-term model. However, it depends on how these coaches use the feeder system to develop their high school program. So if the whole goal of your youth feeder program is to teach the set plays or the presses, inbounds plays, and so forth that you use at the high school level, then you're kind of shortchanging the idea of long-term development. You're still focused more on the short-term results, even though ultimately you're caring more about the long-term results at the high school level, if that makes sense. It can be a positive, especially if these coaches really focus on developing the general skills at a youth level, and then as they get to high school and they have these players that maybe have a better skill level and also some semblance of teamwork and camaraderie already from developing together, and then they can specialize a little bit more in terms of their system of play and things of that nature, the exact plays that they're going to run, etc. The other negative, I think, of a feeder program in this, set up in this type of way is that it's possible that coaches are making their decisions on who's going to be their varsity team, 8 to 10 years from now when these players are, third, fourth, and fifth graders, which could be problematic if the coaches pick out the players who are best at third and fourth grade and kind of anoint them as their future superstars, and then they get the additional coaching and the additional reps and the additional games and so forth. And you're basically picking, again, players based on more or less who's the early maturer or who is a little bit more coordinated or a little bit faster in third or fourth grade, as opposed to looking at who really does have potential to become a good player, years from now. You could take somebody who, a fifth or sixth grader, who might be close to fully grown, especially on the girls' side. That player might be close to fully grown, and be competing against a player who's barely even started puberty, and by the time they reach high school is going to be the taller, more coordinated, faster athlete. But now that player's behind because they didn't get the reps and the coaching, because they weren't the kind of anointed player, the favorited player, or the one that the coach thought that he or she would be able to build around 6 or 7 years in the future. So I think there is some danger with these feeder programs, and it's one of the reasons why when people talk about players and children transferring high schools and so forth, I'm not totally against that, because I think it's unfair if you have a player who is supposed to go to a certain high school, but the coach has made decisions on who's going to be the best players when they're in 5th or 6th grade, and these decisions are kind of set in stones and they don't have the flexibility to change their minds and see the growth of other players. I don't think players should be locked into that high school coach, and they should be able to enjoy their high school experience, and maybe that means that they have to move to a different high school where they get a better opportunity. So I think there are some positives that can come out of these feeder programs, but then I also think that there are potential for negatives if they're not approached in the right manner. I think if you're running a high school feeder program with kids as young as 2nd and 3rd grade, the goal should be to get as many 2nd and 3rd graders in the gym as possible, not to pick out who the best 10 or 11 second graders are, and then focus on those moving forward. If the feeder program becomes one that gets 30, 40, 50 players involved, second and third grade, and then develops all those players as long as possible, as long as they stay interested, and then eventually at the high school level you start to make cuts, then I think a feeder program can be positive. And especially if the high school coach is a good coach and really a good teacher, then it becomes a benefit for everybody. But when it simply is a matter of picking the best players and then sticking with those players all the way through, it's not a long-term model. It's a peak by Friday type mindset. It's a short-term model, even though it's used over a number of years. I don't think the length of time determines whether or not something is a true long-term model. I think it's the approach that we take and the philosophy behind our teams and our organizations that determines whether or not we're really looking at the long-term success of our athletes or whether we're focused more on the short-term success. And when we're focused only on a certain number of kids and putting in a certain number of plays and having them repeat those plays over and over, I think that's more of a short-term model regardless of the number of years. Whereas if we're more interested in trying to get as many players as possible into a program, and we're more interested in the general skill development at early ages, and less interested in the competitive level and the results and so forth at those younger ages, then I think that's become a long-term model that ultimately is more likely to lead to long-term success, high school success, and players who are proficient high school players and have the potential to move on to the college level.